William Shakespeare was an English poet and famous playwright, and is widely regarded as the greatest writer in the English language. Although a great deal of mystery surrounds Shakespeare's life, it is documented that he was born in Stratford-upon-Avon in the centre of England, and was baptised in 1564. He was probably educated in Stratford in the local grammar school, and then there is no record of him until he married Anne Hathaway in 1582. The couple had 3 children, and then 7 years passed, known as Shakespeare's lost years, where there is no documented record of him until he was noted as part of the London theatre scene in 1592. In 1592, Shakespeare's work was criticised by another playwright, which documented his career, although it is unknown when he began writing. Shakespeare's plays were performed solely by the Lord Chamberlain's Company from 1594, of which Shakespeare himself was one of the actors. After Queen Elizabeth I died in 1603, the new king, James I, issued a royal patent to the company, and it was renamed the King's Men. The company built a new theatre on the south bank of the River Thames in London in 1599, called the Globe, which made Shakespeare a wealthy man. His plays began to be published in 1594, and by 1598 his name appeared on the title pages of the works. He continued writing until at least 1613, and died in 1616, survived by his wife and daughters. He is buried in the Holy Trinity Church in Stratford-upon-Avon, and his epitaph warns of a curse upon anyone who disturbs his remains. His works consist of some 38 plays, 154 sonnets, and several other poems. His plays have been translated into every major modern language, and his plays have been performed more than any other playwright in history.
You get the sense that Shakespeare had this incredibly modern mind, and that's important, because it suggests that by the 16th century, people had changed. Maybe not in the way they lived their lives, but in the way they thought about life, about the world. And it's that internal transformation summed up in the genius of Shakespeare that I want now to try to explain. But what excites me even more about the 16th century, more than the Renaissance of the 15th century, is that by now we were daring to question this ancient knowledge. We were daring to look for ourselves, making up our own minds as to how the world really works. Rather than just blindly trusting medieval doctors, for instance, with their frankly ignorant ideas as to how the human body works, by now we were performing anatomies, stripping away the flesh, confronting the reality of the human condition. And in a strange kind of way, this is exactly what Shakespeare was doing in his plays. He was showing us as we really are, as multi-layered human beings with all of our subtleties and our contradictions. And it was this growing sense of self-awareness, self-knowledge in the 16th century that drags us out of the medieval into the modern.
Shakespeare came to London as a travelling player in the year 1588. What he encountered here in London was a world of horizons pushed back. Elizabethan London spilled beyond the boundaries of the old medieval walled city. Houses fronted the river now down to Westminster, and on the south bank in Southwark, beyond the control of the old city guilds, there stood brothels and theatres and taverns, the earthy exuberance of a rich and varied life.
If I had to sum up in one word what was new about Shakespeare's London, I'd say it was cosmopolitan. The word quite literally means moving beyond national boundaries, and London did that too. The Thames was full of shipping. City merchants were trading with Europe. They were backing ventures as far afield as Russia, the Americas, India. Just upriver from here, there's a replica of the Golden Hind, the ship in which Sir Francis Drake sailed round the world. We'd never been more connected. But I'm not talking about cosmopolitan just in the sense of geography. I'm talking about a state of mind. People who are cosmopolitan, they're subtle, they're sophisticated, they're witty, they're urban. They've got minds open to every experience, the high life, the low life, and that's what Shakespeare had. And he took all of this rich experience and he served it up at the Globe, what he called his wooden O. And his audience, who got his wavelength, they lapped it up. And in this flowering of ideas and intellect, we moved as a nation from the old to the new.
Now I'm looking out across the river and I'm enjoying exactly the same view as William Shakespeare must have enjoyed all those many times he walked along this riverbank to the Globe Playhouse where he performed as a player. Now the river in Shakespeare's day was one of the most important parts of the city. Along its waves rode ships from all over Europe because London in those days was a great metropolitan and cosmopolitan merchant port. So coming in from all corners of the globe came ships bearing goods and luxury items and trade produce, but also, more importantly for a playwright like Shakespeare, stories of exploration and discovery, gossip about political change and wheeler dealing in the courts of Renaissance Europe. So this was a crucial place to be in the late 16th century. Now in Shakespeare's day, this river was spanned by only one bridge, and that was London Bridge, which you can see behind me. So if you were at another point of the river and you needed to cross from one bank to the other, what did you do? You didn't swim, you couldn't walk, so you hired a taxi. Now in those days there were lots of these little water taxis plying up and down the bank, calling out eastward ho, westward ho, inviting potential customers. They were called wherries. So you can imagine how noisy it was, the cries of the sailors and the traders, the merchants and the taxi drivers. So it was a very, very busy place. Now we know that Shakespeare lived in Blackfriars, which is on the north bank of the river, but he worked on the south bank. Now the south bank, which is right where I'm standing, the south bank of the Thames, was renowned for its particular lifestyle, or should I say, it was notorious for that, because it was particularly famous for its low life. People came to the South Bank to paint the town red, to have a good time and to let their hair down. So it was the place to come to really celebrate. So you came to see a play, of course. You could come to the Globe Playhouse and see Macbeth, Romeo, Juliet, or Midsummer Night's Dream. Or you came to bet some money, to gamble away your hard-earned cash, or maybe to drink some sack, some ale, some beer, as they drank in those days. Maybe, if you were feeling rather bloodthirsty, you would come to see some bear baiting or some bull baiting. Now, those are competitions between hounds and bulls, or hounds and bears, where people would bet money on the outcome of fights, and they would just enjoy the sheer spectacle of animals being torn to bits by one another. So very, very gory spectacles. And these were absolutely comparable entertainments with plays like A Midsummer Night's Dream. This is very strange to us. Our cultural attitudes have changed since then. But I think it sums up something about the Elizabethan spirit, their hardy nature and their realism and their love of life, the sheer blood and sweat and tears that makes up human life.